Hi again, Mark here from TalkingBass.net. This is the second video in the series on bass line construction. Now last lesson we looked at doubling the bass drum, and I also give you a few pointers on how to create a rock pedal bass line and also how to push and pull the feel. Now this lesson I'm going to break away from those root notes and bring in some extra chord tones. So first of all, let's take a basic chord progression in C major that we can use to play around with. We'll use the chords C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7 and G7, and that's a 1-6-2-5 chord progression. And we know this because if we look at the C major scale and we count up to each of those root notes, we find the numbers. So C, that's 1, the root note, then we have A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, C, D, E, F, G, A, okay, so that's chord 6. Then D minor 7, so D, so C, D, 1, 2, so that's chord 2, and G, so that's C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chord 5, so that's a 1-6-2-5 chord progression. The drum beat is going to be a basic disco funk kind of groove with a bass drum and snare pattern as follows. Chord progression too, so you can hear the patterners. Okay. Now last lesson we focused on doubling the bass drum, and that's just in order to come up with a line that works. So we'll try that again, just using those root notes. So we've got C, A, D and G, okay? And first of all, I'll just double the bass drum, okay? So you'll hear how that sounds. Now you can hear there that I've just doubled the bass drum. But this time I'm going to put the second snare drum in there just to make it a little bit more complete because the bass drum's moving into the snare. So that works fine, but what if we want to add some extra notes in there for a bit more interest? Well, our first port of call should always be the chord tones. Now that's just the notes of each chord, so it pays to know how each chord is constructed. Now I've got a whole series of lessons on chord construction on YouTube and TalkingBass.net, so check those out, and by the end of them you should be able to deal with any chord that you're likely to meet. So for now, I won't spend a whole load of time going into, chord construction guidelines. Let's just look at some basic arpeggios that we can use over that bass line. So we have three basic chord types in that progression: major 7, minor 7 and dominant 7. Now the dominant 7 is just the proper complete name for a 7 chord, like a G7. So we need a refresher on those chords. So first of all, let's just try these chord shapes here at the C, up here at the 8th fret of the E string. Now when we play the notes of a chord one at a time like this, rather than all together like this, we're playing an arpeggio. So a C major chord might sound like this. Okay, so there's a block chord there, every note at the same time. But if I play them one note at a time, that's an arpeggio of a C major. That's as a block chord, and there's the arpeggio. And we often put the octave in there. Okay, so that's a C major arpeggio. As bass players, we're usually more concerned with these arpeggios and the individual chord tones than we are the block chords, and that's because it's how we create melodies or bass lines. So let's first look at the notes of C major 7. So this chord is built from a root note, so we've got that C there, then we have a major 3rd, then a perfect 5th, then a major 7th. So those notes would be C for the root note, E for the major 3rd, G for the perfect 5th, and B for the major 7th. And we often put the octave in there as well. Okay, so up and down. and that's the notes of the C major 7 chord. So if we were to play all of those together, we'd have a C major 7 chord as an arpeggio, that line. A C dominant 7 or C7 would be the same as a C major 7 but with a minor 7 instead of a major 7 at the top. Okay, so we'd have the root again, then the major 3rd, the E, then the perfect 5th, the G, and then a flattened 7th there or minor 7th, the B flat. With the octave, okay, so up and down. So C, E, G, B flat, C is a C7 arpeggio or chord. The C minor 7 would be root note, the C, E flat there, the minor 3rd, perfect 5th, and then the minor 7th, the flat 7 up there, the B flat. So C, E flat, G, B flat. Root, minor 3rd, perfect 5th, minor 7th, or flat 7. So with the octave, so that's the notes of C minor 7. So let's run through those chords again. So we have C major 7, C7, and C minor 7. And you want to play those all around the neck, memorize those patterns. So for instance, D minor 7, or we could have an F major 7, or a G minor 7, or an A major 7, A flat 7. Just experiment using those patterns, moving them around the neck and get used to the intervallic construction of them. So now we have the patterns, let's try them down here on the roots of our chord progression. So first we'll just try them without the track, so we'll just go up and down the arpeggio. So first of all, C major 7, okay? So we know that pattern there. Then A minor 7, D minor 7, and finally G7. Okay, round again. C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. So you can actually hear that chord progression moving there just from the arpeggio tones. So you've got that. Okay, so just even though it's just a linear melodic line, you can still hear that chord movement. So now we'll play those arpeggios along with the rhythm track, and we're going to use the pattern root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and the octave, okay, with a pattern like this. So that instantly gives us a lot more melodic interest, and all we've done is run up the arpeggios. So once you're familiar with these patterns, you should be fairly confident with knowing which type of 3rd, 5th or 7th is available to us on each chord. So we can actually go now back to basics and start building different types of those lines using those intervals, okay? So first let's just start with the root and the 5th. Now, this is a really common pattern to use, and you usually don't have to worry about the chord types with this. We're using a root and a perfect 5th, especially in a major 7, minor 7, and a dominant 7. They're all perfect 5ths. But just bear in mind that if there's an altered 5th in the chord type, so a diminished or an augmented chord, or you see a flat 5 or a sharp 5 written, then you have to adjust it accordingly, okay? So now we'll try two different bass lines using that root 5th pattern. And this first one is going to put the 5th on the 3rd hit, okay? And then the second bass line is going to put the 5th on the 2nd hit. So you'll hear what I mean when I move through these, okay? Okay, so this time we'll try putting the fifth on the second hit, okay? So it's going to be on the little upbeat. Okay. So notice in that second bass line how I was cutting off that second note. I was cutting it short each time to accent that little offbeat hiccup. So we had that. Okay, so that little hiccup there on the offbeat, I'm accenting it and cutting it really short and staccato. So now instead of the fifth, we'll use the octave instead, okay? So in C, of the C chord, obviously the C an octave above. So this octave can work really well for those offbeat hiccups that we were just using. So over the track, it'd sound like this. So again, notice how I'm really digging in on that octave. I'm really cutting it short, nice staccato attack. This time we use the fifths and the octaves together to give us a bass line like this. Okay, so we're going to have root, fifth, octave, and then we can come down it, so. So we have the choice of either just playing the bass drum, or we can hit the snare too. Okay, so with the backing track. So that was just with the bass drum. So this time let's try it with the snare. We can also add an extra little note to give it a little more rhythmic push. Okay, so we'll stick with the bass drum pattern, but we'll add an extra eighth note at the end of the bar. Okay, so that pattern would sound like this. So I've got root, fifth, octave, fifth, root, fifth. Okay? Okay, and that won't mess up any of the groove because we're still hitting those bass drum beats. This is just an addition to the end, so a supplement. So with the track. If you want even more rhythmic interest, you can add a little 16th note skip in there. And I'm going to use a ghost note for this. So that line will sound like this. Okay, so slowly. Can you hear the ghost note in there? And with the track. again, we're not messing with the groove, the bass drum hits are all there, it's just adding a little propulsion onto the end. Instead of using a ghost note, you can actually use full fretted notes for this and come down from the octave fifth root. So we have, which you can also rake or, you know, alternate picking, either way, whichever works for you. And that's very James Jamerson in style. Okay, so we have. Okay, with the track. So with all of these little embellishments, you don't really want to be using them on every single chord. I'm going through them on each chord just you know, for consistency and just to show the example. But in a real life, real gig situation, these are more embellishments, and you'd use them, you know, sparingly or whenever you feel, you know, whenever it feels right. So that's the roots, the octaves and the fifths, but we also have the thirds and the sevenths of each chord available to us. So let's first just try putting the third in there. So we can use a standard triad shape of root, third, fifth, like this. So on a C, that would be root, C, E for the third, G for the fifth there. And with the rhythm, it'd be. With the track. So that was only the bass drum beats. Now if we want to hit that second snare again, we can come back down to the root. So we have. Now let's try adding the sevenths into the bass line. So first of all, let's just try moving up the arpeggio. So root, third, fifth, seventh, and you know, go through the chord progression like that. Now this time we're going to add the octave at the top, okay? And then after that we'll try coming back down to the fifth. Okay, so we'll see. And we can mess around with the order even more by jumping up straight up to the seventh, okay? And then we can come back down in various ways. So here's a few demonstrations of that. There are literally thousands of different variations on this, and that's just sticking to those 4 chord tones in each chord, you know, aside from scales, etc. You want to try mixing them up and trying different variations on each chord, and also experiment with your own combinations of tones. If you start to play around with where those bass drum hits are and introduce some double notes, lines can become very different from those original strict root note lines that we started with, and you get something a little bit more like this. Remember, try not to go too nuts with this stuff. If you stray too far from the original groove and bass drum feel, you can start to clutter everything up and the groove can just, you know, become messy or lacking in focus. So experiment as much as you can in practice, you know, just to play with what's possible and learn the patterns. But on the gig, make sure to, you know, think simple first, establish that groove and then build on it, you know, only if it feels right. In the next of these bassline lessons, I'm going to be looking at approach notes and how we can create continuity in the line by moving into each subsequent chord. So make sure to subscribe to keep up to date on the weekly releases, and visit both my YouTube channel and TalkingBass.net for more lessons and goodies. If you subscribe to TalkingBass.net, then you'll be able to download the free scale reference manual, and if you like that, be sure to check out the study book of scales for bass over at the store. Okay, see you later.